right, hello there, thrill seekers. That was a little snip of a song called Not Perfect by Zero Defects, and that is now available on Spotify and Amazon Music and Pandora, if that still exists, and all the streaming services. And it has to do with today's topic, and I will explain as we go along. Anyway, someone asked me about a very famous old Buddhist poem called Shinjin Mei. So Shinjin Mei goes by various English titles, and excuse me, I'm going to look at the computer that I'm using now. Terabes Asia Online, which has a lot of Buddhist texts, including mine, that are probably uploaded there without permission. I know mine's uploaded there without permission of the author. But anyway, it's a great resource, and they have a whole page on this. They give various translations of the title. Faith Mind Inscription is the one I'm most familiar with. Then there is Inscribed on the Believing Mind. There's another one called, Song of the Trusting Mind. The three characters that title the poem literally mean faith mind inscription. So it's difficult to... Chinese is difficult to translate. So one of the places that it's most easy to find a full translation of this in print, if you want to pay some money and not go online for it, is in Manual of Zen Buddhism by D.T. Suzuki. He has his translation of the whole thing in here. And the poem is usually credited to a guy named So-san, who also goes by Seng Qian in Chinese, who all we seem to know about him from what I've kind of looked up this morning was that he died in the year 606 AD or CE, or however you want to say it. So, and after that, it's almost nothing is known about him. He's supposedly the third ancestor of Chinese Zen, which would mean Bodhidharma, and who was the next one? Oh my god. Huike. I just had to look it up. I cut out a whole bunch of this so that I could go and look up who was the second Buddhist ancestor in China, and it's Huike or Huike. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but anyway, that's who it is. So it's usually ascribed to him, and he was supposedly in his 40s when he first decided to study Zen, and he had some kind of an illness. Some texts say it was leprosy, others just say it was an illness, because it doesn't, the older texts don't say what the disease was. And in those days, as a lot of people, Buddhists today, believe that such illnesses are caused by wrongdoing in the past. So he goes to Huike and says, cleanse me of my wrongdoing. And the Huike says, show me your wrongdoing. And So-san says, I can't show it to you. And Huike says, there, I cured it for you. So that's the story. And the most famous line of this poem, well, the way I remember it, and this is fixed in my memory from who knows how long ago that I first encountered this poem, is the great way is not difficult, just avoid picking and choosing. But I'll be darned if I can find that translation anywhere. So maybe I made that translation up, but when I look at the Chinese characters used to spell it, to write these words, when I look at them in Japanese translation, that's what it says to me. The great way is not difficult, just avoid picking and choosing. So there you go. But here's D.T. Suzuki's translation. The perfect way knows no difficulties, except that it refuses to make preferences. Only when freed from love and hate, it reveals itself fully and without disguise. 1/10 of an inch's difference, and heaven and earth are set apart. If you wish to see it before your own eyes, have no fixed thoughts either for or against it. To set up what you like against what you dislike, this is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of the way is not understood, peace of mind is disturbed to no purpose. And a little bit further along, the poem tells us, abide not with dualism, carefully avoid pursuing it, As soon as you have right and wrong, confusion ensues and mind is lost. And here, Professor Suzuki spells mind with a capital M to indicate it's the great mind, not just my individual mind. And a little bit further along, it tells us, when they are not sound, the spirit is troubled. What is the use of being partial and one-sided then? If you want to walk the course of the one vehicle, which is Buddhism, be not prejudiced against the 6 sense objects. When you are not prejudiced against the 6 sense objects, then you are one with the enlightenment. The wise are non-active, while the ignorant bind themselves up. I guess they don't eat enough fiber. While in the Dharma itself there is no individuation. They ignorantly attach themselves to particular objects. It is their own mind that creates illusions. Is this not the greatest of all self-contradictions? And here's another line from the poem. One in all in one. If only this is realized, no more worry about your not being perfect. You know, Zero Defects just came out with a song called Not Perfect. Actually, we recorded it ages ago, but it's now on Spotify as part of the album Debasement. Spotify and I guess Pandora, if that still exists, Amazon Music, all the streaming services, you can go listen to our song, Not Perfect. So that's the poem. Dogen has a few things to say about this poem in Dogen's extensive record, Eihei Koroku, which is the other sort of big record of Dogen's teachings other than Shobo Genzo. I find that Dogen's extensive record, Eihei Koroku, is often more difficult than Shobo Genzo, although the pieces themselves in it, the little bits are, sorry, a postcard bookmark just dropped out of it. Anyway, although the little individual pieces are much shorter, they're also denser in terms of there's a lot going on in each one, even though they're quite short. So let me read you one of these quite short ones. It's called, in the translation calls it, Garudas Choose to Eat Dragons. And that is, those titles were put there by Dan Layton and Shohaku Okumura. The original pieces did not have titles, so here it goes. Here is a saying. The third ancestor, great teacher, Jinju Sengshan, which is Sosan, let's just say. I don't like these. I mean, I'm not trying to diss Chinese, but I don't like the Chinese pronunciations. They're much more difficult than the Japanese ones. The third ancestor, Sosan, in Inscription on Faith in Mind, there's yet another title of the thing, said, the supreme way is not difficult, only disdain picking and choosing. Actually, that's closer to the version I remember than the other versions anyway. Great Assembly, that's the people he's talking to. Have you ever studied the third ancestor's meaning? Tell me, what is the third ancestor's meaning? Passing through 3 kalpas, kalpas are immensely long periods of time, billions of years. Without fail, we arrive. Passing through numberless kalpas, without fail, we arrive. Without arising from our seat, without fail, we arrive. Without arising in a single moment, without fail, we arrive. Therefore, the third ancestor said, the supreme way is not difficult. Simply to disdain picking and choosing is like a Garuda not eating anything but dragons. And I'm going to read you the footnote because it'll be better than my explanation. A Garuda is, or Garuda, I'm not sure how we pronounce it, is a mythological Indian bird that is a guardian of the Dharma, often present in the Buddha's assembly in sutras. Garudas are famed for eating dragons. Here, Dogen uses the characters for golden-winged kingly bird, a standard epithet for Garudas. In this Dharma Hall discourse, Dogen is pointing out a paradox in the Inscription on Faith in Mind. Disdaining or avoiding is a kind of preference, a kind of picking and choosing. But for Garudas, it is simply natural to eat dragons. For Buddhist practitioners, it is simply natural to follow the way. Okay, that's a good way of putting it. I might put it a little bit differently. The sort of only insight I have to offer you in this piece is something that occurred to me during one of the great sky sesshins which were held at Hokkyoji, which is the place in not Missouri, Minnesota. Sorry, my sister lives in Missouri. Anyway, that I just was at a couple of weeks ago, a kind of Zen place there. And I don't know what it was, but I was listening to a talk by Dokai Georgeson, who is the guy that runs the place. And somehow I'm sitting there listening to him talk, and it just popped into my mind that this whole picking and choosing thing. I think when most of us here avoid picking and choosing, or avoid preferences is another way of putting it, we think that means that we'll walk into the Baskin Robbins or the Handel's ice cream here in the town where I live is really good, much better than Baskin Robbins. You just go into the ice cream parlor and say, "Give me whatever flavor you like, for lo, I am a Buddhist, therefore I am beyond preference." So you don't pick strawberry or vanilla or I don't know, pomegranate or whatever weird flavor they got on the tap this week. I always like black cherry. But you say you have no preferences. So the idea of having no preferences, sort of, in my mind, originally when I came across it, was to sort of do something to myself so that from now on I would never prefer one thing over another. I would never enjoy the Dickies more than the Ramones or something like that. I would just have no preferences. And that isn't really what it means. I don't know what Dokai said that day, but it made the point that avoiding preferences is now. Boom. Now. So, meaning, when the poem is talking about avoiding preferences, it's not talking about some situation in which you forever rid yourself of all preferences. It is talking about, at this moment, don't ask for this moment to be anything other than what it is. That's what avoiding preferences means. And so, as to this footnote about Garudas eating dragons, that's another aspect of it. So Garudas, it's a mythical thing. Dragons are mythical, Garudas are mythical, but the idea is the Garuda always likes to eat dragons. I always like to eat, what did I just say, dark cherry ice cream. Not every time, but most of the time when I get offered ice cream, I'm like, do they have dark cherry? So that's my preferences. And there's a sort of natural way we all are as individuals, and that is okay. It's fine if you prefer this to that, but you avoid in this moment preferring things. The other aspect of this that kind of comes to mind as I'm thinking about it in the context of how things are these days is that I feel like American culture in the last 10 years or so, this has probably started even before then, but I've noticed it more in the last 10 years, has gone crazy about preferences. Like, everybody should have exactly the thing that they prefer to have and be the thing that they prefer to have, and everything should be just given to you. And if anybody calls you the wrong thing, and you can get angry and yell about it on the internet, and your preferences are the most important thing in the world. And this makes me think of an incident that happened when I was in Japan. My boss at Tsuburaya Productions was this old guy named Kiyotaka Jimmy Ugawa. We always called him Jimmy. I never understood. Well, he told me where the name Jimmy came from. It came from when he was young. It was just after World War II ended, and he got himself a job on an American Army base, being a gopher, a runner for things. And this is how he learned English. But one of the guys there just started, I guess Kiyotaka or Ugawa was too hard to pronounce for these American military men, so they started calling him Jimmy, so he became Jimmy Ugawa. So Jimmy Ugawa, who was 100% Japanese in spite of being called Jimmy, told me there was a time when the fact that I was a vegetarian came up. And he got kind of, he was very tolerant of me being a vegetarian, but he gave me this lecture about how after the war there was nothing in Japan. Like people just, if you could get food at all, that was a great thing. So you didn't have the luxury of preferring one thing to another. And in our culture right now, we have this tremendous luxury and privilege, to use that word that gets thrown around so much, of just being able to get whatever we prefer. I think about it now in terms of watching television. I know that's trivial, but back in the old days, I like to watch a lot of rock music videos and documentaries. And if you wanted to see a video, a film of The Who live in the late 60s, early 70s, when they were at their best, at their peak, you had to go to a flea market. I would go to flea markets and search out these crappy, 19th generation VHS tapes and be glad that I could watch the scriggly, scrawly video of The Who's performance. Now, if I want to watch it, I just go, The Who live 1970, bloop, bloop, and then point at the little thing at my TV and bang, instantly it's there. So that's just one example of how easy it is to get things. I remember, gosh darn it, when I was a young kid, getting Mexican food in Northeast Ohio was difficult. Now it's really easy, but there was your choices were Taco Bell and this chain called Chi-Chi's, and that was it. And both of them were not. Both of them required a half-hour drive from where I lived. So. Now it's everywhere. So so our ability to just get whatever we want whenever we want has kind of numbed us to the fact that we can't always get what we prefer. And I think it's created an extremely weak society, a society of people who are just, I don't know, they're just at a loss if they can't get their absolute soy milk latte with the cream on top and the blah blah blah, I don't know, whatever. If I was writing this in a book, I'd take the time to make the most complicated Starbucks order you ever heard. But that's the way we are. If we can't get that thing, we're like, oh my god, I'm gonna make a TikTok about how I couldn't get the thing I wanted. And so that's another aspect of this poem, I think, and that's a sort of rough aspect of the poem, a sort of very, hit you on the head sort of aspect of the poem. And I think it's more subtle than that, but it also includes that less subtle bang on the head aspect of just stop trying to make the world exactly the way you want it. Just accept things as they are. Change the things you can. Change the things that need changing. That's fine. Work on, making society better and all that. That's great. But at this moment, here you are. If you want to be happy, avoid picking and choosing. So there's my sermon for the day on picking and choosing. I hope you like that. If you want to pick and choose to send me a donation, you can do so at the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main and usually only ways of making a living, so I appreciate your support. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. Okay, that's that. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey, Ziggy. You really like that blanket, don't you? He found this blanket we left on the couch, and it's his favorite blanket, and anytime Ziggy finds this blanket, he has to go lay on it. So I'm going to let him lay on his blanket and stop bothering. All right, we'll see you, Ziggy. Bye.